All right, so here we are. Welcome everybody. If you're tuning in, thank you. I'll ask you right now, please like this, share this across whatever platform you're watching on. Ask your questions in the chat here on whatever platform, whether you're on YouTube, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Throw your questions in the chat about what we're going to be talking about today. I say it again, I really love doing these conversations and putting these panel type discussions together because none of us, all four, have actually all met as a group. So I think I might be the only link between all of us. Actually, no, Richard and Missy, you guys know each other. Yeah. So awesome.
Yep. In fact, when we were down at the last time together, you were actually there as well.
Yeah. So we all come from these different industries, but I love getting, people who are from different industries together so we can really see the overlap and where we can all learn and grow and help others learn. So today we're going to be talking about virtual reality, education, and facilitation, a little bit of coaching, probably some consulting stuff that we'll probably touch on. But welcome, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Cool. Marnie's here. She says now that public educators have more experience with online facilitation, Zoom. Yeah. How can we launch more VR experiences for classroom collaborations with professionals, technicians, and laborers in the industry? That is huge. Marnie, that's exactly the stuff we want to talk about tonight. Thank you.
One thing that comes to mind, Graham, I think this will be a really interesting conversation based on the pre-show chat. And that's this, because both Missy and Dr. Webb were talking about how much tech goes unused when people, when organizations invest and then it sits in the closet. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in just the 2D immersive experiences, just using a web browser to log into some of these systems and experiencing them. We don't necessarily have to have goggles to get into those systems. I'd love to just jump into that and hear some of y'all's thoughts there too.
Yeah,
that
awesome.
Douglas, that's probably I don't know how much background you know about what Designery, the company I have, does. Maybe it might be, and I don't know, really not sure what you do. Maybe it'd be good to kind of give a little bit of background. But essentially, in 2019, I retired out of the university, and the joke I say, which is also happens to be true, is I haven't worked this much in my entire life since I've retired. But we jumped in. I ran the Innovative Design Studio at UAA, and we're a public-facing university, so one of the questions you always got asked was, "Oh, this is fantastic. Who does this in Alaska?" And the answer, I did my due diligence, the answer was nobody. And so I started this company. It was during an ASTI conference, and we were in Fletcher's, which is a bar, part of the Captain Cook Hotel, and we probably had too much adult beverage, and we said, we should start a business. And here we are these years later. But there's a huge demand for it. And we do across the board, like VR and all the way down to the reality capture. But the area that I'm finding the most traction in fact, that's what we were just doing this afternoon, is immersive reality, which is the 360. You take your 360 camera, you create it, you throw in hotspots, you do some other kind of, cool kind of wizardy things, but essentially it's very simple to do, very easy, and you can put it in a headset, but you don't have to. You can use it on a phone. Most people use it, what I affectionately call 2.5D, which is putting a 3D object on your 2D monitor, but you can still move around.
Yeah.
So, and there's a tremendous amount of traction there. And I think that it doesn't require a huge amount of coding. In fact, almost no coding at all, just learn a little bit about hotspots. And you can build and work into that environment, and putting on the headset doesn't really take that much more additional expertise. And pretty soon you're in this immersive world at a very low cost and easy to access. but now you can go all kinds of new places with it, and we can start building that reality inside the immersive environment. So anyway, in answer to your question, that's kind of what I do. And you mentioned IR, immersive reality. I think that's, again, we're probably, of all the work we do, that's the one thing that's growing the fastest and we're doing the most of.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, it reminds me, you talked about going lots of places, and you know, even the hardware has a cost to it. But when you think about the cost of travel and hotel rooms, and when we're trying to bring people together, and the time the cost of the time spent getting there, I think, you know, even if these headsets get replaced by new technology in a year or two or whatever, it's easily offset by, you know, a $300 headset is easily paid for like when you don't have to travel one time.
No, absolutely. And especially in a place
cool.
like Alaska, where travel can be astronomical.
Yeah. So like I wanted to put all you guys together because I really thought highly, or I do think highly of all of you guys. And earlier, you know, a month ago, Voltage Control put on their annual facilitation summit, right? Douglas, can you tell us about that and how VR played its role in your guys' summit?
Yeah, you know, it showed up in a couple of ways. We wanted to experiment with, you know, offering VR as an option for folks to show up and experience the conference from VR. And so we used AltSpace for that, to basically live stream the speakers from Austin into that space, and also give attendees an option to, you know, engage with each other, play games, ask questions, meet each other in the space rather than being confined to Zoom. And it was really, one interesting phenomenon was that we had folks in the Zoom wearing headsets. So they were like logged into AltSpace while still also in the Zoom. So I'm not sure how they were managing their audio feeds, but that was entertaining.
That is good one.
Another thing we did, we collaborated with Mural Labs and Meta to explore how to create new opportunities in facilitation in the Horizon Worlds platform. And that was really fun. We did a week of exploration and building prior to the conference, and then we showcased what was built. And we built 2 different worlds. One for, let's see, I think we did summer and spring, I believe. That was really fun looking at different models. I think my favorite was the lazy river of reflection, because it really explored how you can play with the notion of the passing of time as you float down the river, rather than just having a timer. You know, those mechanics get kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So we were when we were building out those worlds and we were kind of working together and collaborating, one of the things that we noticed right away was a couple people were a lot lower than us, right? And so some people were way up here, and then other avatars were way down here. Can you tell us about that? What was ended up happening?
Well, I think that was a really fun. I think that's an artifact of the way that Horizon Worlds works. But when you first experience it, it's so cool. It's like Jack and the Beanstalk or something. Because when you come into the world as a participant, you know, you're just normal sized based on the size of the world that's being built. But if someone's working on the world and they've got the world scaled down really small so they can spin it around and see the whole thing, and you join, you see them as, you know, you're down here tiny, and you can see Douglas, this big monster, like working on the world. And it's like really neat. It's super cool.
It is cool. So some people are having trouble with it streaming on LinkedIn. In the comments on LinkedIn comments, I dropped the YouTube link in there, and then I pushed it out to the other platforms as well. So please, if it's not working on LinkedIn, follow over there. I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah. Missy, tell us your background. What do you do for Anchorage School District?
I'm the career and technical education. I'm the director for career and technical education. So I look at it through the lens of how could VR facilitate learning, especially when you're looking at technical training or access to technical training. And we're seeing this come into the CTE space in different ways. Z Space is one of them I've seen bring this into the CTE world for a hands-on experience. And I think that's what sometimes we struggle with in our world, is accessing technology or accessing the learning. You know, if you don't have access to dental labs, how do you practice dental? How do you do those things? And Anchorage, we're fortunate, we're a big city, but I start thinking in Alaska in general, in our rural communities, and could these spaces open up learning opportunities for more students? Douglas, you're talking about the cost of headsets earlier, and they're really not that expensive, and we have them. We use them primarily right now in our programming pathways. So we have students who are doing 3D animation and game design, and they're in our programming pathway. We've got one intern right now at Designery working
Yes.
in an internship.
And that's great. Love it.
Yeah. So I think I look at it that way, but I mentioned this earlier, is really, I think I was a CTE teacher. I worked in ed tech for quite a while, and then moved back into CTE and the director. And one of the things I always look at is just the thoughtful planning on our side, that it really does need to be intentional. I've seen lots of technology come in because it's shiny and flashy and new. And this is more of a caution to the education side, not to the, to the innovation side. I think it's all good, but it's the education side is really looking at, we got to come up with a plan to use it, not just it's here, but what's our plan to use it? How does it tie to our learning outcomes? How are we going to train our teachers? Like, that is a big step. You're talking about a leap for many people, teachers, to say, Marty's right. We're using Zoom all the time now. I can tell you 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, I was using Zoom. And a lot of people in my district were like, what is this thing? And now it's common. So, but I think that's the way with this technology. I look at it and say, if we're going to do it, we've got to have some intention and some planning and some training.
Yeah. Dr. Webb, what is integrating VR technologies into an organization? What does that change? What is Missy describing right now? What are your potentials that you see for the school district to start going down this road of integrating more learning experiences in VR?
Well, there's a few ways of looking at it. One of the things for me, I think the primary thing missing is, and it's been missing for a while. We went online, and we went online with all this technology, and the technology is amazing, and it does all these sorts of things. But what we brought to that was our industrial era instructional design. We brought to this the way, we thought of classrooms and having a teacher up in front and having seats, and that is not the environment. That the potential of this environment is not, okay, everybody, answer this post and have 2 responses of 2 sentences. That is like so industrial era thinking. We need to mix it up, and I know gamify was quite popular and kind of got a bad name, but kind of make more of an interactive game of it. And we have to learn what the sociology of use. We know what the technology can do. We have to learn the sociology of use for the instruction. And it's not going to be, this is not your grandmother's schoolroom. This is a whole, and part of what we're doing by necessity, just like this has happened many times in human evolution, we're having to build this. We're sort of building the bridge as we cross the river. Or the one I like is, get all the pieces, jump off the cliff, and then assemble the plane on the way down. So that's one element of it. So we have to, teachers have to be an important part of this. The instructional design has to be an important part of this. The technology is only one of the elements in that mix. But then the second thing I would say, in my experience, is we need to learn to work together on this. We need to be sharing. Like just this last week we just inked a contract with NACTech. Are you familiar with NACTech up in Nome, Missy? I assumed you would be. And so we're doing their small engine class, and then from there we're going to jump over into probably snow machines because it'll be winter, and then small or ATVs, and then small engine aircraft, because that's but when as we're doing this, I'm thinking, like, I'm sure that there's lessons that you have learned, Missy, that probably could benefit us in this process, things that we can do there and bring this technology to you. And then one of the most amazing things about the coding and the technology is the fact that once we build it, it's built. We can now start sharing this around. Like, let's say we do build a we're going to build a small engine. I'm sure we could sit down with Anchorage School District and all the other school districts, and how do we now disperse this? How do we share this? And how do we all come into a community where we're all constantly improving it? So I went way long-winded there. I'm a recovering academic, so sorry, I'll turn off lecture mode here. So
I want to just add another point there, because I love all that I'm hearing. And I just wanted to say that I think that experimentation is also key. If giving teachers access in ways that they can explore and understand the possibility, because I think the anti-pattern and what we've seen fail in years past is where some company decides they want to create some application that's specific for learning or specific for teachers, and they sell it in, and the price is inflated, and there's no creativity or room for teachers to be themselves and do what they know best, which is helping students learn. And it makes me, because if they truly understand the technology and they've experimented with it, they can start to do interventions. They can start to do things like, let me do what I would do potentially anyway, but now I'm in this VR space, I can start to create small group conversations in a way that's more fun and more in the moment than I can in Zoom. I can take people on a field trip to Africa through this like Wander app. There's lots of different things that they could do that aren't necessarily specifically curriculum apps, right? And I think encouraging them to experiment and find ways that they can bring the technology in as little interventions and moments, I think could be really powerful.
That's awesome. Matthew Ship says, designing on the way down sounds like a design sprint. Love that. Douglas, you have a ton of experience with that, the design sprints and getting organizations to think more innovatively and then to adopt their own ideas, right? So how do you lead organizations to adopt their own ideas? If VR is a solution, but we've heard and we know that adoption will be rejected if the project isn't carried out correctly. Like, what's your experience with that? How do you lead organizations to adopt their own ideas?
Well, the number one, gosh, there's so much going on there, right? We're talking about change, right? And how to help organizations navigate change. I think the number one place where people fail is that they focus too much on the logistics and mechanics and the operational components of the change. Like, I've got this perfect plan. okay, that's great. Well, no one was included in the making of this plan, so no one cares about it, or or you don't understand the psychological impact that this is having on various people, members of the team, because they feel like their identity is being at risk, right, because of these changes. And so I think this people aspect of the change is often missed. And how do we take time to listen and be with people and make sure they're heard and their ideas are taken into account? And that's one of the powers of the design sprint, which a lot of people don't realize, is that it's this cross-functional nature. We're going to bring people together from all different parts of the organization so they can be involved in this stuff. And it's usually at the very beginning of a project, whereas some of these people usually only get involved at the end. And if they're raising flags at the end, it's much more costly. It's much more painful to fix it at that point. And so as much as we can learn early on, include people in the dialogue, and just make sure people are heard and included, it goes such a long way.
Right on. Cool. Oh,
so
please go ahead.
Yeah,
I'd be curious, having, we talked about some of the things that are going on. What in your experience is something that you as a director of CTE in a school district, what are some of the things you'd like to see available? And I'm not just talking about products or services, but ways they're being delivered, and kind of some sense of what's the old saying? You don't sell the product, you sell the problem that it solves. What are your problems that need to be solved?
well, I think I'm going to go back. Graham or Douglas, I think it might have been one of you two that was talking earlier about one of the things that a problem we need to solve, and is actually, nope, it was you, Dr. Webb. You were talking about the old functions, the archaic way of I sit in my row and in my chair with my pencil and I answer the question. That I'm going to go back to a small evolution in CTE. CTE has tended in general not to be that way. We've always been this learning environment that is very contextualized, hands-on. That's just the nature of what we do. But there's still a lot of that rote learning happening. And I think the problem to solve is that problem, because I don't go to an employer and they say, give me somebody that can get, that has the right answer. They say, find me somebody that can problem solve, that can think creatively, that can communicate, that can, it's all these skills that they're not necessarily a technical skill, but and so I'm wondering, when I hear these conversations and I hear us talk, what excites me is the potential to look differently at how we can do that. When I'm sitting in a classroom here in Anchorage, but maybe my classmates are halfway around the world. And I'm learning, not only do I have to learn to communicate, I've got to have some cultural competence built in there as a human. There's a lot of things that I look at that problem that it can solve or help us look at differently in education. And maybe that we wouldn't look at that as a classroom full of 30 kids sitting with a headset on, but I think there's other things that we can do. And
yeah. Dr. Webb, how do you, or all of you guys really, how do you overcome that? My first problem that I run into when I try to do VR with clients for any type of collaborative work is just onboarding. It's a monster of an onboard. Like, just getting somebody to use Slack is one thing, but now you're trying to, get them, okay, put on this headset and work inside this virtual space where you have, distance plays a factor, and it's got to be real. And it's, how do you quickly onboard people into that stuff? New technology.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we have to learn, because not only are we learning the new technology, we're learning it it's being presented in a new environment. So I mean, I remember years ago, at some point, they had a emerging leaders in online learning seminar. You got invited to down at Penn State, and the first presentation, the woman who was giving the presentation, she wrote on the whiteboard in huge letters, "culture," and she said, "Okay, if there's one lesson you take away from this entire week that you're going to be here, culture always wins." And we have two problems. One, we have this old culture that's still hanging around and telling us this is the way it has to be. But we don't have the new culture yet, but there's a series of challengers vying for adoption. And so I think really what we need to look at is not just the end state, but you know, desired end state, and then how do we get to it, and how do we evolve ourselves? How do we not just change the technology? We have to change ourselves along the way. And I'm not being Pollyanna about that or mystical or something. This is a very real thing we have to do, and it doesn't happen often in human history. And here we are, but we're stuck with it. It seems like it's all coming together. And so, and then Missy, you know, someone like in the position that you're in, you have all these rules and regulations that you have to follow, and there are all these ways of doing things that we've done all this time. And do we really want to do something else and get in trouble, or do we just stay? It's going to take a lot of courage and maybe a few disasters along the way for this to work itself out. But we got to start thinking in terms of how we get brave and how we get to the other side. Again, building the plane on the way down.
Yeah, education's full of red tape and bureaucracies. We're very good at that, and there's some of it for very good reason. You know, if you think about spaces where you're immersing students into, not, you know, in my four walls, I can tell you the 32 kids that are sitting there and the one teacher. Yeah. Take down those walls, and where are you putting them? And all of a sudden, that container, that safety net is gone. And so there are a lot of things that, at least I'm talking from the K-12 side, you know, we certainly have to think about those things. And so anytime you're looking at this new technology, you're going to start with what are all these other pieces to it, you know? Yeah. And I think that's why change is hard in a Titanic like us that has, you know, 50,000 students, and we do have some of that difficulty with change process. So
coming back to the question, one other little point, because I think all that is super valid. I just wanted to say that when we're looking, especially getting companies to adopt this stuff, you know, you got to think about the return on investment, right? Like if it's like a 2-day workshop and we haven't used VR with them before, it doesn't make sense to bring VR in, right? But if it's an extended project and for some reason, and it seems to align with the mindsets they're wanting to adopt or some broader goal of theirs, then maybe we bring it in. And the final thing I'll say on that is never combine the onboarding and exploration of a new technology with the content and or the problem solving you're undergoing, because it's too much cognitive load. If they're trying to learn the tech and explore things together at the same time, it's too much. And that's, I think, why people struggle so much with trying to learn the tech, is because they're usually in situ trying to do something else at the same time. So if you separate those two things, the cognitive load goes down, and they can concentrate on just getting the basics down. Even just silly, playful things, just like play a game together or something, and then you can move on to more complicated stuff.
It's super awesome. That's a really good point. What do you guys think about Marnie's question here? Some students say their career goal is to be a YouTuber. Is VR creation the next frontier?
Well,
I mean, we've got people forming, digital careers on Udemy, right? And Udacity and all these other places where you can create a class and host it. Plenty of people are making a ton of money on TikTok for whatever reason.
Well, I don't think it's a single technology like VR. In answer to the question, yes, VR is part of the next frontier. Let me do my little spiel here about the reality spectrum, and I'll do a high school science blip here. So back in the early 1800s, Michael Faraday, the famous experiment where he discovered that magnetism and electricity were the same thing. The wire in the tub of mercury and going around in magnetic. What people don't realize is that was the beginning of electromagnetic spectrum. For the next 100 and some years, this spectrum grew out. Among its other creations was the electric motor. I often tell my students, like, think about a world where you couldn't have an electric motor. Saying how little of your world would be left, or where electricity was important part of processing anything or making anything happen. And then you go out, you go to X-rays, and you go to infrared, and then you go to radio waves. I mean, right now we're living in the electromagnetic spectrum. We have all these electrons dancing around on our screens, but the radio waves that's transporting, that's all electromagnetic spectrum. The argument I'm making is that we're going to be creating a reality spectrum. I don't know if that's going to be ending up what the word is, or the name is, because there's a whole number of bands in this spectrum. VR is one, but AR is absolutely, a vital part. IR, we talked about earlier. IR is going to be a part of it. Modeling, we already kind of got that, but the whole modeling, the whole 3D worlds, the creation of 3D objects, of holographic objects, that's going to be part of it. The whole reality capture where we go and we use LiDAR scanners. And then on the other side of that spectrum, just like we have X-rays and gamma rays over here, as we move up in that spectrum, you're going to have data is going to become incredibly important. We're going to start taking all that data. We're going to apply artificial intelligence to it. And we're going to then have, unlimited storage, unlimited AI, unlimited data. We're going to be able to do things that we can barely dream of right now. And that's all in this spectrum. So it's not just one thing. And you don't have to say, oh, well, I've got to jump into XR. Like for my company, one of the things I try and find is what somebody is, not just what they're good at, but what they have some passion about. The Anchorage School District student who's an intern with our company, born modeler, absolutely born, like, and so it's like, okay, I'm taking our lead modeler, and let's the two of you spend as much time together as possible, as friends, as gamers, as playing, and now that modeling part of it is being expressed in that person. It doesn't have, and VR is a result of modeling and game engines and all of that being put in place. So I really see this as as a whole realm of new jobs and of things that we can do, not just VR.
It's a gateway.
So I would say like that question's really fascinating because if you look at like there's the YouTube creator, there's TikTok creators, which they're struggling to monetize, but people are flocking to that. There's also Twitch creators. There's all these Web 2.0 creators, and you could totally do that same play inside of a VR platform. If someone were to build a platform where people could go and create and monetize, where I think the new frontier of that whole phenomenon is going to be in Web 3. And the interesting thing about that is it could be a complete new economic model because instead of it's like weird. I don't even know how to describe it because it's sort of not capitalism, not socialism, but the money can go straight to the creators. And so I'm not the biggest Web3 person, but it's super fascinating to me. And it seems to be like that would be the replacement for where these creators are now.
That's awesome. So you guys all kind of touched on this question that Carolus has. Is like where would we be with free flowing collaboration and less boundaries if we could trust knocking those walls down, right? That you were describing, Missy. If we could, be in contact with our team that is already dispersed in a more like involved and integrated way, and if like you described, Douglas, if we could put teams who are working on a project together in that more interactive way where they can get that more emotional feel closer to being that personal in connected energy, where would we be? What are you guys' thoughts?
To me, what I think of is like the last year, or I guess it's not the last year because we've been in school this year, but the year before that when we weren't. And there wasn't that collaboration. There was a wall of little black boxes with a name in front of them. That was the experience that environment gave our teachers and our students. But I would think in an environment that fostered that collaboration would be limitless for those students. And we would see that. So it wasn't AR or any VR or anything like that. But I noticed during that time, I encouraged teachers to build up kits to send home to students so that there was hands-on learning at home rather than just that sit and get model. And the pictures that teachers would send to us of their screens were all faces and all doing something that was interactive. And that's what I think that it could foster is that more authentic interaction that, again, I'm going to go back and build those skills up that we really need to have. We need to have people who can communicate and collaborate. And so that's what I think taking down some of those boundaries could benefit us.
It's funny. And most of the companies we work with, I would say the boundaries are quite often unintentional, like they're interpersonal. It's like the really awesome experiment at Stanford where they challenged, they had kindergarten students do the same challenge that CEOs did. And the kindergarten students just blew them out of the water. And it was because the CEO spent so much time trying to understand their pecking order and their position against each other and the authority and not stepping on anybody's toes. Whereas the kindergarten students just leaned in and started throwing stuff together and figuring out what works and going, oh, that doesn't work. And they quickly learn from their mistakes. And so free flowing collaboration allows you to have a tighter learning loop. And the only way you can establish that inside of organizations is by creating self-managed teams and organizations. Really amazing book called Team of Teams by General McChrystal on this stuff. So anyway, I could go on and on. I'm going to shut myself up on that one because I'll go way too long.
No, it's awesome. I'm going to drop that book in the chat for everybody too. It is a fantastic read. Well, like, what is your guys' experience with people not being familiar with tech? So you're trying to integrate a new solution. We're talking about virtual reality. We're talking about using it for collaborative work, for education and educational design. What is your guys' experience with, with integrating that technology with people who are not tech savvy?
I think you'll open up a storage closet and see a whole bunch of technology. Is if it's just without that comfort level. I liked Douglas's. When he was talking earlier about that free play, like don't go in with a purpose and overload, but try it. And we used to have an innovations team in ASD that had those free play days that you could come in and just play with technology to say, and not have that. And that's an interesting way to approach it. And I think it's hard to integrate technology with resistors to changing what we've always done.
Sure.
Let me tell a story. I'm not sure if it's exactly spot on to the question, but I really feel like it is. So I'll give it a shot. We're doing a lot of work with Kansas, the state of Kansas. And surprisingly, Kansas and Alaska have a lot of common problems. You wouldn't have thought that, but long distances, small communities, hard to get teachers to commit. So I got invited to they had a rural education summit last summer. And at that summit, I heard the following story. So they decided, again, this speaks to the closets that you were talking about, Missy. Somebody gets the idea. They went to a conference and they saw double robots. Are you familiar with the double robots? Yeah, okay. So they saw double robots and they said, oh, this is going to be great. And they bought 2,000 double robot setups. And they were going to send it out. And they made the decision, okay, juniors and seniors, all of the schools in Kansas are going to get these. And it was an utter failure. All like the juniors and seniors are like, this is hokey. This is, you would have thought they would be the ones that adopt, but they were like, don't try and, scam me with this sort of a thing. So they put those 2,000 double robots into a warehouse. And then there was this young woman who was a student, master's student in Georgia Tech, who happened to be doing her whatever work she was doing in the classroom in Kansas at a distance. And somewhere along the line, she found out about these double robots. And so she said, well, let's try them. But they tried them in second, third, and fourth grade. And she would do her teaching. She'd come in, she'd, do her little, come in and say, hi. And so they had this video of it. And this is after a while she's been in there. You can see her coming down the hallway, a little double robot. You can see her face. And she goes, and the door opens because it has like an automatic opener. And she goes into this second grade classroom. And all the kids are like, yay, Mrs. Such is here, and the one little girl runs up, the one girl in this second grade class, and she hugs the double robot. And it's just been this, they love it. And so now all of a sudden they go, we can take all of these out of the closet and put them in elementary. And we can use it for the distance teaching, the student teaching for master's programs and others who have to do their student teaching in rural Kansas, because again, it's long distances. So there is a huge success story. And that's part of what I'm thinking of in ways outside of, we tend to say, oh, well, I've got a doctorate and then you should do this. when really what we should do is be listening to the 2-year-old, or not 2-year-olds, although them too, the second graders. And just because we try technology one way doesn't mean that it can't be successful in a different way. And so that's my hope, is that we set our students loose in our closets full of stuff and tell them, make something out of this pile of stuff here. And I suspect they probably can do it, but we've got to kind of loosen up, some of the restrictions we have, not just the legal ones, but also the restrictions we put on our own thinking. Yeah. So anyway, that's one of my favorite stories. I love that story.
I want to add on to what you were, the piece about the 12th graders not kind of embracing the tech, and because Graham, your question was right. What about people that are not used to using tech? And I bet those 12th graders are used to using some kind of tech, and so
absolutely
the resistance to the tech isn't always associated to not being experienced with it. And you'd be surprised. I've run so many workshops where, whether it's Mural or Zoom or whatever the tool, and I'm getting lots of resistance, or like, I can't figure this out. And I'm like, wait a second, you're a hydrology expert working for the FDA. You've spent your whole life like in this crazy software models. You can't tell me that this software, like, it's just there's some aspect of it that's foreign or different. And these, and a lot of times, especially people that are supposed to be smart and respected, the elders, they don't want to show that they don't understand something. And so oftentimes the rejections can come across in different and strange ways. And so, I think that's why that having that exploration time and just dedicating some time to like, hey, let's just figure this out together. And even doing some differentiated learning where someone's having trouble, just pull, have a one-on-one with them and say, hey, how can I help here? Because even though they might seem to be struggling with the tech, it might be something else. They might just be like rejecting it. And once we get that wall down, then they can, work more seamlessly.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that the feedback that I heard in that conference is for the older students, it was social pressure. It was like being, it's not cool, or it's not, and apparently it's been a long time, but apparently 11th and 12th graders are very sensitive to their social situations. So,
yeah. Well, guys, we've been on here for 48 minutes. Like, this is the part that I hate most. I love when like these conversations just slowly like die out and they meet a point. It's like, all right, this feels right to close here. Let's get off. But this one, like, I think we could all go on for another 2 or 3 hours talking about this.
We haven't reached the end of the runway yet.
Man, we talked about, you said this is not your grandma's schoolroom. I love that. I'm taking that and running with it. We all got to work together to modernize. We've got to prepare our teachers, prepare your managers to support your project. Change adoption, change management is always going to be a thing. I love what you said about resistance to the tech isn't always going to be just because people are unfamiliar with tech. It could be some underlying stuff. And I really love what you said about their identity. Like, you're challenging their identity. Partnering with people that are going to be affected. Like, know that, identify who the stakeholders are, and pull them in and make it their project too. You guys hit on like, you can't, what'd you say? You can't only change the tech, you have to change yourself. I loved that. And then we said that the theory of virtual reality, the application of it as we know it, is probably just the beginning of it. Like you said, Dr. Webb, like, we're really at a stepping stone here. It's going to accelerate so much more in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years. We talked about needing to continue to communicate, collaborate, knock down the walls. And if those are virtual walls, we've got to knock through those, listen to your second graders, and and support your CTE programs locally. Like, that's That's the future. I think like if you
I
don't,
agree.
yeah, I think in about 10 years, I think 10 years, I'll put it on the timeline. 10 years from now, you're going to go to a job interview and you're going to be asked, hey, what can your artificial intelligence do? Or what kind of language can you code in? It's going to be like Excel. You can't do a PowerPoint. It's going to look like that. So support your CTE programs. We've got to create these opportunities to learn the technology now. But,
Instead of Excel being the
Nice.
number one hard skill we ask for.
oh yeah,
Coding
Excel's
language.
going to die shortly. Well, I don't know. Everything runs on
this
Excel in the background.
Last summer, my niece got married, and my sister said to me, she was marrying a plumber, and my sister said, "Oh, thank God she's marrying a plumber. He makes $100,000 a year. He has no student debt, and whenever I need him, he can fix my plumbing." I love it.
That's fantastic. Douglas, voltagecontrol.com. Man, if anybody wants to connect with you, can they find you here? Or can they find you on social media?
Yeah, they can find me. They can definitely check out voltagecontrol.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm around. Happy to connect and chat. And I'll also say, if you haven't heard of Pep Talk and you're needing to brighten your day, call those kids and they'll send you a nice little message.
Yes. Yes.
Oh man. What is
that Pep Talk?
PEPTOC, Pep Talk. It's all over the web. Just search it. You'll get the phone number.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm on it.
It's awesome.
Awesome. Richard, designery.net. If anybody's got questions, they want to connect with you, they can do it at designery.net, or where at on social media can they hit you?
I'm not much of a social media guy, I gotta say. But yeah, designery.net, or can I give out my? They can text me. I don't know.
Send it.
907-802-1272. And I'm on probably social. I guess I'm on LinkedIn a ton. But yeah, and we're trying our best to be an Alaska-centric company, but we keep getting jobs in Florida and Kansas, and so. But Missy, I'd like to circle back and connect with you again, and I definitely want to talk about NAC Tech and some of the other stuff that we're doing and ways that we can share this. And also, I just wanted to say it's great having the intern, and I definitely look for that in the future as well.
Perfect.
Because I think that's part of the new. We need to be educating people, our students, and having them go out into the world and learn about it in real time.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. Missy, if somebody wants to connect with you and ask you some more questions, where could they find you?
LinkedIn is a great place to find me. asdk12.org/CTE. There's all those ways you can find me. And love to connect. And internships, that's what we need to be doing for our students. That's what we need. And more than anything, I'm going to plug the businesses. We need the businesses to say yes. It is not a immediate ROI for a business, but the long-term investment for that is, we're going to be molding the workforce of tomorrow, and that's how we need to do it.
That's terrific. That is awesome. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, just as a company, I just want to say our experience with working with Anchorage School District has been wonderful. So great experience.
Thanks.
Awesome. And the school district still needs some substitute teachers, right? I've got my application in. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Hang fast, and we'll go ahead and close this out, and then we'll chat for a couple minutes after.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.